because I jumped a set of railroad tracks and blew it out on the landing. At AMS, I liked coming up with theme cars and different costumes. I had transformed our shop van into the A-Team van, and I showed up in it dressed as Mr. T. And then one time we had a big meeting talking about our new building we were moving to, and I showed up dressed as a cowboy driving an old Ford pickup truck. One day, one of the guys in back mentioned that me and my assistant Frank, who was a shorter, pudgy Italian kid, looked like we could be the Blues Brothers, and it just hit me that that is going to be my next theme. When I was probably 5 or 6 years old, I saw the movie for the first time, and what really got me was that they said that Elwood tells Jake that he bought the car at a Mount Prospect police auction. Well, I grew up in Mount Prospect, so naturally that meant a lot to me. Wow, they're talking about my hometown in this movie. It's just a northwest suburb. It's not that exciting, but as a kid, this is your world, right? That this is your hometown, and you're riding your bike around Mount Prospect, and you're going to the schools in Mount Prospect. So to have a movie on television talking about your hometown was pretty significant. So I set out looking for a Bluesmobile. I didn't want to go down the traditional route of a '74 Dodge Monaco because I was really looking for a car that could be daily driven, a car I wouldn't mind driving in winter that wouldn't rust away like a '74 Dodge would. But I also wanted to do autocross, drag racing, road racing. I just wanted a car that could do it all and that could be driven like the Bluesmobile, like the Blues Brothers would drive it. So what I settled on was the 94 to 96 Chevy Caprice with the police 9C1 package, had the LT1 engine, which back then was, a pretty decent performer, and a car that could be thrown around and really enjoyed and driven like a Bluesmobile. The quest started, I wanted to find a black and white one so I wouldn't really have to mess around with paint and stuff, and I ended up finding one in Connecticut. And it had a built motor with heads cammed, built rotating assembly, a built trans, a upgraded 10-bolt rear end with Yukon axles and a Detroit locker. And someone had really spent a lot of money on this thing, beefing it up to about 350 horsepower or so. And thankfully, I wouldn't have to invest all that money. So I arranged to go pick up the car in Connecticut. I had a buddy of mine, Tommy Pasalacqua, who lived out that way. He went and checked the car out and said, yeah, it's solid, needs a little work, but all the pieces that he says are on there are on there. So one weekend, I kind of snuck out of town. I told the guys I was gonna go tow a friend's car that was in Florida. I had to go grab it quick, and it was just a weekend thing. I had to get back to work, but I had to go get this car so no one would suspect, where was Arne going with his van and trailer. I literally drove to Connecticut, picked this thing up, and came back. And I ended up stashing it at my buddy's shop. And he kind of went through the car, just making sure that it was solid enough to run. He ended up making a speaker for the roof, and we put a PA system in the car. I had my buddy Greg at Sticker Dude Graphics. He did all the distressed markings on the car to make it a Bluesmobile. So the star on the side of the car said AMS, and I got a license plate that said AMS Brothers. And I decided I wanted to surprise the guys at our grand opening of our new facility. We had just moved from a little rented 6,000 square foot shop in Arlington Heights and bought this 16,000 square foot facility in West Chicago, and we were having this big grand opening, inviting the public, and it was a pretty big deal back then. So I wanted to build this car in secrecy to show up at the event dressed as the Blues Brothers in this car. So we got everything going. There was probably about 500 people in attendance. The event had been going on for a few hours. And about noon, me and Frank kind of ducked out the back and said we had to go pick up something at my house, which is about a mile away. So we got to my house, we shaved down to the signature Blues Brothers sideburns, we got into our suits, and we headed over to my buddy's house to go scoop up the car. And mind you, there's 500 people strewn about all inside the shop, back by the dyno, just wandering around out front looking at the cars. And I round the corner in this Bluesmobile. As I'm driving by, I'm on this megaphone saying, "Tonight only, the fabulous Blues Brothers, Rhythm and Blues Review." As I drive by, you know, being it's Chicago and it's the Blues Brothers, everybody was pretty interested in it, wanted to take pictures with the car and with us. And it was a pretty exciting time, and it was really like the quintessential moment of the open house. So after the open house, I enjoyed the AMS Brothers Bluesmobile for 4 years as my daily driver. We fixed some of the issues with it, replaced the transmission a couple times. Once it was because I jumped a set of railroad tracks and blew it out on the landing. I really only got pulled over one time in it, which is kind of nuts because I'm driving around in a black and white police car, driving it like an idiot. But I had a lot of fun with the car, drag raced it, autocrossed it, I road raced it. I mean, I did everything. The car was not really spectacular at any one of those things, but it was just a blast to just, you know, pitch sideways around corners, do donuts. I mean, the car was pretty bulletproof, 350 wheel horsepower and a built LT1. But it was always in the back of my mind that I really someday needed to build a real Bluesmobile. Because, well, you know, having a 1994 Chevy Caprice is, you know, a little different than a 1974 Dodge Monaco, even though a lot of times I would fool people with this 94 Caprice and they would ask if it was the car from the movie, which is completely ridiculous because the car was built 14 years after the movie came out. But, you know, being a purist, I eventually knew that I had to build a real one.